Hey, I'm John Root from Newington, Connecticut. I currently live in Nashville, Tennessee, and have played drums out of Nashville for 31 years. I'm currently on the road as a drum tech with Brooks and Dunn. I remember growing up in Newington that there was a drum shop in town, but there was another one in Wethersfield, and I couldn't wait till I got my driver's license so that I'd be able to go over there and check out what the other guy had. And just lo and behold, the size of the shop and all the equipment that was there, it was like a candy store. And part of what gave me the passion for playing drums, it was guys like Bob who were so creative with their instrument, creative music, and wanted to share their passion with everybody. All the guys that worked at the store were always so friendly and open to teaching you what you needed to know, and I feel that came from Bob. With Bob's band, Spiral, they were so ethereal, but then on the other hand, everything that kind of Bob dug into was so nuts and bolts with all of his inventions and creative ideas that he made the drumming world a better place. And he's sorely missed. Definitely leaving and moving to Nashville was difficult because of the camaraderie of all of those people there, and the love for music that Bob gave to us, his passion. I'm very grateful for. Rest in peace, Bob.
My name is Skeebo Knight. I met Bob at PASIC 1994 in Atlanta. We became good friends over the years. We had many long conversations about life, creativity, and music. Having chronic health problems has made drumming very challenging for me. Bob's invention, the Drumframe, made it possible for me to be able to continue to play drums for several more years. I'm very thankful to have had a great friend like Bob Gatzen.
Hey everybody, what's going on? Greg Vasso here. Wish I could be there with y'all. Some of you may know me from my years with Max Creek or Jiggle or otherwise. I'm now down here in South Texas, so I wanted to send some video love to y'all for this day. I'm glad that it's happening. I spent a lot of time at Creative from 87 to 97, give or take. And initially I was a high school dude who played drums and was checking a few things out. By the time I got the gig with Creek in the early 90s, I was going there a lot for, my drum needs, and for all the shows that we were doing and otherwise. And that's really when I got to know Bob and the whole crew, Mark, Jeff. And I remember just being taken by his innovation. I mean, just someday I walked in there, it's like, hey man, check this out. We go into the back and it's the Drumframe, and I remember just being like, what is this? Like, what is this contraption? And sure enough, I sit in it. It's like the most comfortable position I've ever been in on a kit. And I'm thinking to myself, like, who thinks to take an entire drum set and tilt it up 30 something degrees, just amazing. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, this thing, this is amazing. It's going to make a lot of money. And as I'm thinking about that, Bob's, look at Bob, and he's like, the coolest part of this, he's like, we just gave it to, had this gentleman try it out. He had a skin condition. Don't remember all the details, but because of his condition, he couldn't sit at a kit like this and play anymore, but they got him on a Drumframe and he was relaxed and he was able to play drums like for the first time in a long time. And Bob was like, that's the coolest thing. And I'm like, that is the coolest thing. And this guy's head is in the right place about this, not about making a lot of money, first impressions. And then throughout the years, Noble Cooley, as you can see, had an influence on me. Here I am still playing them 30 years later. And I remember coming into the shop, you know, and it was always something new with Cooley. Like every single time he came, some new kits, you know, the skinny toms, the snares. And I remember just being how impressed he was himself with it. Like he wasn't trying to sell it. He was just like, these are sick drums. And they are sick drums. The more I played them, the more I was enlightened. And here I am, and I will probably play this thing till I die because they're just beautiful drums. So that alone is a wonderful legacy that I have from Bob. You know, and the drum heads, of course, throughout the years, all the work they did with Evans and otherwise, the innovation, just amazing. I remember the first time I put an EMAD on my kick drum, and it was just like, holy moly, like a kick drum, you know, head makes a big difference on a drum, even if the drum already sounds great by itself. The guy's innovation was just off the charts. He was just, you know, kept going and going. And some of my fonder memories are just weekdays that I would go in early in the afternoon and no one was there, so it was just me and Bob, and he'd be like, let me show you this, let me show you that. You know, it's like, you know, again, mad scientist, so, you know, genius is thrown around a lot, but I think it fits here. You know, the body work is just amazing, and it was so great to have all those years with him. And, you know, one last thing I remember, outside of all that, just talking about music, trying out a cymbal, trying out one of his heads, and I'm lending him my thoughts on it. And he's like, yeah, it's like, there's no right or wrong. It's like, it's all subjective. It's like, whatever makes you play good as a player and whatever serves the music, he's like, that's where it's at, you know, and you know, a wonderful piece of truth outright, and all the more relevant in the 80s and 90s when being hip and being cool was a little bit more of a thing back then, and setting up your drum set the right way, the cool way. He's like, yeah, whatever. Like, you know, play the music, play the art. So thank you, Bob, for all that. You know, we're going to miss you. And I hope everyone's well. My love to all.
Hello all, Dennis Chambers here. I just want to say a few good words about my dear friend Bob Gatzen, who I'm dearly going to miss. Bob was a, you know, great innovator, a great teacher, a great drum shop owner, a great producer, a drum maker. The guy was an innovator, definitely an innovator. And he was always thinking 3 cards ahead, maybe 10 cards ahead, now that I think about it. He was always digging for the newest thing. And that's the thing I loved about him. He would call you up sometimes and, you know, drill through your brain. And then once he gets to the bottom of it, he goes, is that it? That's all? Well, I guess I gotta go. You know, it was always just quick, you know, just quick. Man, I'm just gonna miss that guy. You know, his energy, his light was just so bright, and his energy was just great. I love that guy. Him and his wife, Joanne, I just loved them. You know, they were just great people. When God made Bob and Joanne, he broke them all. Definitely he broke them all. Love you, Bob. Love everybody at the drum shop. Bye-bye.
Hello, my name is Billy Ashbaugh. I'm a professional touring drummer, and I would just like to share a few stories about Bob and how we met and sort of our relationship over the years. I was out touring with NSYNC when I first met Bob. I was playing the Drumframe, one of his many inventions, and he came out to a show. We met backstage and we just hit it off instantly. We just connected and developed a pretty quick relationship. It wasn't long after that I was invited to perform at the Modern Drummer Festival, and Bob was kind enough to write me some drumless music that I could perform with, which was very challenging and a lot of fun to do, and I greatly appreciated that. He helped me greatly. I felt like he kind of took me under his wings, and he took care of me, introduced me to certain companies and got me on board, and it really made me feel good, and he supported me tremendously. And not long after that, we Bob mainly, developed this program for kids called Start with the Arts, just designed to help kids to sort of think creatively outside of the box. We did 2 drum sets and took them into school systems. It went over really well. We had a blast. It was a lot of fun. His work ethic is amazing. Anyone who knew him, he just was nonstop He was an early riser. He got up early, as did I. So we used to joke because he knew if the phone rang at 4 or 5 in the morning, it was always me. And we spent many mornings just talking about programs and just life in general. It was a lot of fun. And it was a sweetheart because whenever I would visit, it was just so welcoming. Let me stay at his house as we worked on projects. And hanging down in his basement, he was like a mad scientist. He had all kinds of stuff going on down there. And one time I came across this prototype practice pad that he was working on, who knows for who. I fell in love with it just the way it felt. And he said, "Yeah, man, go ahead, take it. You could have it." He goes, "It's just lying around." So that's just the kind of guy he was. And I tell you what, Bob, to this day, my favorite practice pad still. So love you, Bob. We miss you. Thanks.
Hey guys, I'm Matt Starr, and I grew up in Rocky Hill, Connecticut. I started going to creative probably about 82. My memories of Bob are very focused, always very focused. And, you know, in the early days of my drumming, I had crazy long hair, and I was in the Motley Crue and Iron Maiden. And Bob would talk to me as if I was just any of the other drummers that were hanging out there, most of whom were, you know, much more sophisticated and talented than I was, you know. And I just always felt his presence. I remember his eyes being very clear all the time. You know, he just had this focus, and it's not surprising that he was able to accomplish all that he accomplished, because I think that's just the way he was. It was always Bob and Joanne. You know, I'd tell my buddy, hey, Mike, you know, I went down to creative today. "Oh, did you see Bob and Joanne?" It's never Bob. It was Bob and Joanne. That was always like a two-part thing. And yeah, man, I love those times. And then eventually the lab coat came in, you know, and so then it became going to the shop, but then like peeking behind the slider door to see what was going on over there. You know, and if I was lucky, yeah, Bob was wearing the lab coat, and "Hey, Matt," you come out, you know, "Hey, what are you working on?" And it was always, you know, I remember seeing him drill holes in drum heads and thinking, if I had a hole in my drum head, I have to throw it in the garbage. Why is this guy drilling holes in the drum head? Well, you know, he was thinking about things that I hadn't yet considered, and you know, then you get the Evans Genera. So, you know, yeah, it was a really special time in my life. Anytime I drive by that building where the shop was, I still look thinking maybe there's a hairdresser there now, I think, but maybe, just maybe, there'll be a drum set in the window. Maybe, you never know. I'm gonna keep on looking. You know, I've traveled the world thanks to music, and you know, ended up playing with a lot of people I grew up listening to, like guys from Kiss and Mr. Big and Joel and Turner from Rainbow, and some of the guys from Dokken, etc. And, you know, anytime I've met drummers like Greg Bissonette or Jonathan Mover or Dennis Chambers, where'd you grow up? Rocky Hill. Oh, in Connecticut? Oh, Bob Gatzen? Oh, you know, oh man, but you know, and just the admiration and the respect for him is just very evident in anyone that ever talks about him. And so again, for me, this rock and roll heavy metal kid, that was my local drum shop. But how lucky was I that Bob had created a place like that for us to gather and, you know, learn and grow. And, you know, ultimately, I mean, most of the guys in the room here tonight are going to be guys that I know from the drum shop, and most of them will be guys that I still talk to. And that's because Bob provided this space for all of us to congregate. And yeah, you know, my parents didn't want to hear me talk about Tommy Lee, but I could go to the drum shop and talk about Tommy Lee. And I still have that poster of him upside down from the girls' tour that hung over the door. And I remember walking through the door the last day, and Jeff Brown says, I go, "What's going on?" He goes, "We're closing." I said, "Oh, for real?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, if you want anything." I go, "The Tommy Lee poster over the door and the Peisty Sound Center rainbow thing." And he goes, "Okay." He goes, but the Tommy Lee poster, it's all ripped up." I said, Doesn't matter. So I still have those things, and I'm going to keep them forever. But again, just a very special place that Bob created for all of us, and ultimately a community was created out of that, and that's something that we're going to have forever. So super grateful for Bob, and I'm glad that this night is happening.
Hey everybody, Tony Leone here, coming to you from Brooklyn, New York, and just sending along a few remembrances of our friend Bob Gatzen. It's truly an end of an era. Growing up in Newington, I grew up in junior high taking lessons over at Charlie Donnelly's. Like all the other kids that wanted to play drums in Newington, we all went to Charlie's first. He had the drums in the window. He was right in town. But sometime in the early 80s, maybe around 83, when I started high school, we started to hear about over in Weathersfield on the Celestine Highway, there was a place called Creative Music. And at that point, he still had the drum shop on one side and the guitar shop, Creative Strings, on the other side. And of course, Integrity in Music in the same building. But there was something different about Bob's shop. You know, it had a pro shop kind of quality to it. You know, you could get all kinds of different sticks there. They had cymbals displayed. There were new and used kits all over the floor. And Bob, you know, walking around in his running gear like a mad professor, you know, full of info. Interesting because as a young kid going in there, it was slightly intimidating because there were all these guys around that really seemed to know what was happening, you know, about all the latest gear, and it could be slightly intimidating. But I remember on many occasions Bob pulling us aside with, you know, info about some heads that he was designing or working on with Evans, you know. And, you know, as a 15-year-old kid, I just stood there in awe, you know, with the info kind of bouncing off my forehead or going around me completely. And then we always heard the stories about Bob when he started really becoming involved with Simmons and how he was the tech for all the Simmons drums over at Live Aid, which was a huge deal to hear about. So Creative Music really was a place of like hope, you know, and inspiration for a lot of young players that went through there. And later on, when I started teaching there, it was a real homecoming for me, because I started studying there with Gene Bosey, probably in about 84, maybe 85, I think it was, 86. So that place holds very special memories for me, as does Bob. I was also inspired to get into running through Bob. I had many long talks with him about training and shoes, and he sent me down to the Run-In, which was down the street from Creative on the Celestine Highway. Anyway, we're all gonna miss him. I miss those times terribly. And all the cats that I got to meet there, Mark Carter, Jeff Brown, Bruce, you know, and Gene Bosey, of course. So rest in peace, Bob. We're thinking of you down here. We miss you. And thanks for everything you gave us. All right. Lots of love. Peace. Also, I want to add Frank Jagir's name to that list because I used to sit outside of his lessons and listen to him dealing in there. So shout out to Frank Jagir as well. All right, peace.
Hello, my name's Chris Whitten. I'm sitting here in my studio in southwest England. Today I've been recording with my 1989 Noble Cooley Starr series kit using my PDB Boa bass drum pedal that Bob Gatzen designed and sent to me very kindly, and also playing my 1920s Ludwig Black Beauty snare drum that I bought from Creative Music in about 1992. And when I left college after 4 years, I didn't really know anything about drum tuning. I didn't have any studio skills or anything. And I had quite a few disastrous sessions early on, sometimes with well-known record producers. Anyway, after a lot of missteps, I finally ended up with a well-known brand of Japanese drums and a 1970s Ludwig Black Beauty snare drum, which I used on all my sessions up until about 1987. Well, I knew at the time that the other great studio snare drum was the Slingerland Radio King. This was before the internet, eBay, and vintage drums were very thin on the ground in the UK. So I was on tour in America around 1987, and I picked up a copy of Modern Drummer magazine to read on the aeroplane. And I saw an article about two guys that were making a modern version of the Slingerland Radio King, and that was Jay Jones and Bob Gatzen. So at some point later in the tour, we ended up in Manhattan, and I ran down to Manny's or maybe Sam Ash, I can't remember. I found a Noble Cooley snare drum and bought it and brought it home, and that became my second main studio snare. The next thing that happened was I got asked to play with Paul McCartney. I did a few auditions. He decided he was going to do a studio album. So more or less the whole of 1988, I was in the studio with Paul McCartney, playing my Japanese drums, my 70s Ludwig Black Beauty, and my brand new Noble Cooley solid single ply snare drum. Towards the end of the album, people started talking about a world tour. And I was in a bit of a quandary then because I wanted to use the Noble Cooley snare drum, but it didn't feel right to play Japanese drums on stage without playing their snare drum. And as I say, it was before the internet and email and things like that. I think I was communicating with Noble Cooley by fax machine at that point. Maybe my drum tech, Adam, had phoned Jay a few times, or I spoke to Carol. And I remember saying to them at one point, it's a real shame that you don't have a drum kit because I really want to use your snare drum on this Paul McCartney tour. And Jay said, but we do have a drum kit. We've just made one called the Starr Series. Noble Cooley very kindly sent over a brand new Starr Series kit they'd made in time for Paul McCartney's rehearsals. We started the tour in September 1989, and in December 1989 we had a couple of shows at Madison Square Garden in New York City. And I think that's probably the first time that I met Jay and Carol, Bob and Joanne in person. In February 1990, the tour was back in America and we had a couple of shows in Worcester, Massachusetts. We had a day off before the first show, so I borrowed a town car off the tour and took a couple of people with me, and we visited the factory in Granville, Massachusetts, and met Jay and Carol again, and Bob was there. The tour photographer Bill Bernstein came with us and took these great shots, and he still talks about what a great day it was. Towards the end of July in 1990, we played our last shows on the Paul McCartney World Tour. I'd been with him for 3 years at that point, and I just felt like it was time to move on and find a new challenge. I had an American girlfriend at the time, and throughout most of the McCartney tour, I'd been living in America anyway. So I was basically just hanging out between San Francisco, Los Angeles, and also traveling up to New England to see the guys at Noble Cooley and stay with Bob and Joanne occasionally. I remember sitting in Bob's laboratory home studio and talking to him for hours about drum construction and design and acoustics and things, all stuff I didn't really understand, but I learned a hell of a lot from him over that period. Bob told me that he and Jay had been working on a new drum kit for Noble Cooley, the Horizon series. It'd be a little easier to make than the unconventional Starr series single ply kit. The Horizon Series drums were perfect for my next gig, the Dire Straits World Tour, which started in the middle of 1991 and stretched out way through 1992. Those drums that I used sounded fantastic night after night, but the tour itself was a bit of a grind, well over a year long, and towards the end of the tour, I just never wanted to see another drum kit ever again, probably. So I eventually moved back to London and started writing music for film and TV for quite a few years. The last time I spoke to Bob on the phone, he was so enthusiastic about drummers and drumming, and he was starting the Drumframe company, and he just sent me this Boa pedal to try out, and we sort of had drifted apart because at that point I was kind of sick of drumming and I wasn't really into the whole scene of drumming, and he was more and more enthusiastic about drumming. He was a brilliant guy because he wasn't so much a businessman as someone who was passionate about music, and even more than that, passionate about drumming and helping drummers improve their lot. And so I just want to say at the end that Bob has left a massive legacy in the drum industry. A lot of mainstream companies copied a lot of his ideas. The Evans drum heads, the tube lugs, single-ply drums were pretty thin on the ground in the 80s. No one was making them. And so it's incredible the legacy that he's left. And unfortunately, he left us way too soon. So rest in peace, Bob and Joanne. I miss you a lot. And what an amazing impact you had on my life and career.
Remember, it's about playing music, playing the drums, and especially having fun.